got my hands around what BIM was, VDC, and getting into this really neat industry.
On this episode of the Matthew Bird Podcast.
I got started in scanning. There was not 50 devices to compare and think about. SLAM and mobile and automatic registration. None of that existed.
The BIM consultant with a Master of Business Administration
and a Master of Science in Management and Leadership.
And the Chief Executive Officer at Hansen Consulting Group,
Jacob Hansen.
Been involved in manufacturing, residential home building, commercial, semiconductor. I'm a pretty independent person and really like learning, engaging, and disrupting and changing what we're doing to make it better, more efficient.
Owners and asset owners are now saying, we want this done, but they also don't have the understanding to know, how do we even ask for what we want?
Organizations are inanimate objects. They're built with people, and how we communicate and how we work together is going to solve these problems.
Working in person, collaborating in person, building a culture as a business.
Invite and embrace the change in your life. Life sucks. That's not a bad thing. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of things you're going to have to go through, and your ability to overcome them is what's going to set you apart from the rest of the pack.
Hey guys, before we listen to the full episode, we wanted to ask, if you're liking this content, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? It really helps me and our team grow this podcast and bring in more awesome guests to the channel. Thank you, and back to the episode. Jacob, welcome to the studio. Thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here, Matt. Finally.
Where'd you join us from today?
Reno. Coming over from Reno, Nevada this weekend.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's start with an introduction to you and a little bit about what you guys do now before we go backwards in your story a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob Hansen, really excited to kind of be in this space, in this industry. I currently own and operate Hansen Consulting Group. We operate predominantly in the BIM and VDC space, reality capture, and engineering.
Cool.
And we're working on large-scale advanced manufacturing, semiconductor, oil and gas projects nationwide.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we will get to talking about current business, technologies, and all that. But as I always do, I love going back in people's story and kind of hearing some of their career journey. Because I always think there's pieces of value people can take from hearing people's stories, people's journeys, especially with part of our mission of like bringing awareness to technologies and the industry. Young professionals getting to hear some of the story of like, how do we even get into this? What was the journey? I enjoy it.
Yeah.
So let's go backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I even this weekend had great opportunity to participate in a career fair over at BYU, Idaho, and been able to talk a lot about this the last 24 hours with a lot of students.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah, a lot of good information. So it's fresh on the top of the mind. I have I guess as a lot of people in construction in general in the AEC space have a lot of non-traditional paths, and I think I align with that for the most part. Over the years, I've been involved in manufacturing, I've been involved in residential home building, commercial, semiconductor, all of the above, and every one of those projects, every job, every role gave me a new perspective on what opportunities there are in the workplace.
Yeah.
And so to get where we are today, I think if we go back to the beginning, I started in the field. I started doing a residential electrical and was roughing and trimming houses, semi-custom, custom homes. And that gave me one of those initial perspectives of like, there's a lot to learn.
Yep.
And I think that was one of the most exciting things was get onto a project, in general and say, it's got to start somewhere.
So I want to even go back. It makes me pause and ask even a further back question. So if that was one of your first roles, say you're in high school age or college age, or, did you know you wanted to get in construction or what?
I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Part of it I wanted to. I had some family members who worked for some general contractors in the small town I grew up in. It was a farming town, agriculture town, so I thought I was going to do that. I had interest in healthcare. So, as a typical teenager, a lot of opportunity, had no idea what I was going to do with it.
So what were the steps that led to you getting into that path?
So a lot of moves. Traveled across the country, served a mission for my church out in the southeast, came home, was able to relocate to, a little bit larger city in Phoenix, and got an opportunity just looking for work while starting school, and got an opportunity in that electrical apprentice position.
Cool.
To just get involved in it.
Yeah. Okay. So then when you were doing that and school?
Yes.
So then what was your focus in school?
So that changed a lot too.
Yep.
Ultimately finished with organizational leadership, Bachelor of Arts program at Arizona State.
Cool.
So finish that out. So I don't have a CM degree,
Yep.
nothing in construction, nothing
Yeah.
in design, architecture, whatever.
Which is very, it's something I love talking about apart from industry stuff is just school in general. It's like,
Yeah.
I would bet it'd be hard to put a percentage to. I'd be curious, but from the conversations I have, like, I don't know, 70% of people if they went to college, have a degree in something that has nothing to do with or was not like the angle they thought they were going to take.
Yeah.
Many people, they explore and they go to school and they try different things and they change plans and then they end up, shifting careers over time, and finding their path later.
Yeah.
So, it's very normal.
I think with that, though, and that's why I chose the program I wanted to, because I went from healthcare to engineering, and finally I said, I want a degree that I can use in any industry I want.
Something that's applicable. Yeah.
And I think that's probably what allowed me to stay in construction and have the confidence to more generalize in that space. I really enjoy the part of organization and strategy, but in construction, it's about people and process for me.
Yeah.
So I was able to, seamlessly integrate what I was learning in school as I learned new things from a residential to commercial type construction. I said, what, this applies.
Yeah.
And I can apply it anywhere I want.
Yeah. So now let's go back to where kind of the career path. So you were in electrical. Mm-hmm. What were some of the steps from there?
So I was in electrical for a short while, and then I had a great opportunity, completely unexpected, but I moved into manufacturing and totally unrelated. It was building home theater and movie theater screens.
Oh, cool.
So all your IMAXs, Harkins, and everything.
Yeah.
So we actually manufactured screens.
Wow.
So built some great relationships there, was there for about a year and a half, and then I got a great opportunity to come back into construction, but again, in a new environment I never dealt with, was coming into Intel with an electrical subcontractor, MEP subcontractor, as a BIM field coordinator.
Oh, cool.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah. Was that your first intro to BIM?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even know BIM existed. I didn't know semiconductor facilities existed.
Yep.
And we have this interview and we're talking about Revit and we're talking about BIM coordination and we're talking about subfabs, and I was lost. Mm-hmm. I don't know why they hired me. But I'm glad they did, and had a really, really great experience with that company and with that project as a whole.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. So then you went into manufacturing. So now you're learning a little bit as you go. You got electrical, you got manufacturing, you get introduced to BIM. Then what happens?
I kept going with it. That was one of the unique things I'm grateful for learning. Coming into BIM in that environment, in the semiconductor environment, a very high level of detail and a lot of coordination. There was multiple subs involved, and that's what I learned with.
Yeah.
I didn't realize as I went on, another year, 2-3 years down the road, I started looking out and say, well, they're using BIM in K through 12. They're using it in hospitals. They're using other places. And what I've learned in that time is it's executed differently.
Yeah.
The way that people perceive it, how they engage in it, is completely different. And that's what I talked about with a lot of the students this weekend at the college. They go through their VDC program, and it's very generalized towards architecture, basic MEP coordination. And there's nothing that you're going to get taught in school that could ever prepare you for what you're going to learn in a semiconductor site or Google data center or EV factory.
Yeah.
You don't learn that in school.
Nope. Do you have much knowledge? Obviously, you were just there about the program at BYU. I at least from what I've heard, they seem to have a pretty decent program, at least around the introduction of some of these technologies, where I think a lot of schools struggle with teaching BIM, Revit, laser scanners, or LiDAR, or they seem like they've got a program that's pretty decent. Is that?
Absolutely. They have one of the most comprehensive programs in the country, and going as far as saying, probably one of the only ones that's really developed as far as it is. And they do. They integrate the VDC into scheduling, into reality capture, a lot of the CM. So these students are able to touch a lot of the different parts of the industry.
Yeah. Yet, like you said, I think even the good schools that are teaching it are still not quite preparing you for what the real work environment,
what you'll run into,
spaces are probably. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so at what point, you've talked a little bit about some of the career paths and the changes you got in semiconductor, really learning BIM and seeing opportunities. At what point did you decide you should run your own company?
I think that was probably a thought that always been in my mind for years. I'm a pretty independent person and really like learning, engaging, and in a ways disrupting and changing what we're doing to make it better, more efficient. So first couple months as I got my hands around what BIM was, VDC, and getting into this really neat industry, I realized the opportunity that was there. And then over the years, as I worked with different companies and different project types, I saw a lot of, gaps.
Yeah.
A lot of inefficiencies that I knew it would take some time and some patience to continue learning before I could ever get to a point where I could step out on my own.
Yep.
But eventually that happened.
Cool. Yeah. I always love hearing from people who made that jump. A little more story around that.
It's so scary.
Like, take us from that time period of you're still in a role, but then you decide when the moment is to leave, step on your own, What was it?
Fortunately, it's as daunting as it was. I had great mentors. A few years into this engagement in BIM and VDC as a whole, and I had somewhat of a smoother transition to it than others. I didn't have to abruptly, hey, let's go start an LLC, let's go start this business. I did come on as an independent contractor, started the kind of a business under the table. It had a lot of that set up and had the opportunity to engage with GCs and subcontractors with his owner's rep firm that I was with. And so that gave me a ton of insight and perspective as to what the industry really looked like. Because they weren't just a BIM company I worked for. They were an owner's rep, CM type firm, and they were engaged with some of the biggest players in the space. Mm-hmm. And so I got to participate in a lot of that in many ways. And that continued to just encourage me and give me the confidence to say, you know what, there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah.
A lot of different ways to engage with different types of people, different projects.
Yeah. So what was the hardest part of fully jumping in your own company?
I think for any business, right, it is this idea of sustainability, security. Where's the next project? Where's the next opportunity? Where's the revenue going to come from? Because at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to pay myself. Yeah. And if I'm not out there doing it, nobody else is going to do it for me.
Yep.
and that's probably what the most eye-opening thing with all of it. And it forces you to do a lot of things you naturally normally wouldn't do, or at least I wouldn't do. In terms of networking, building relationships, spending that quality time to, be relevant, be personable with people, understand the problems that are out there and try to solve them.
Yeah. So on top of the, the fears that arise or the extra work that piles on, in the first year or two of starting a business and building, is there anything that stands out to you that was either surprising or like you didn't expect, or something that was harder than you would have expected? Like, what was something that happened that you weren't expecting in that scenario?
I think I look at it as a present tense and not so much a past tense.
Okay.
It's what we're going through now. The business was started a little over 4 years ago, but in its current state has been operating and performing for about 2 years. Okay. Beyond just myself.
Yeah.
And what we're learning, at least what we're trying to offer, is unique. We're integrating ourselves in a position where we're not a BIM company. We're not we're not targeting one specific service or one specific space. We're really trying to find ways to help subcontractors get better at utilizing the tools and processes that are available to them, and marketing that, getting a presence out to an industry who does struggle in many cases to adopt and innovate in an effective way. And so to have a business model that's based on that and to try to, in a way, convince people, persuade them to say, hey, this is going to have some value to you, that's absolutely the biggest challenge we're dealing with as a business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest challenges of all the new technologies is in order to implement them, grow them, do them as a service or as, a company that's what you do, is everything is built around change, people having to change process, accept a new technology, learn something new. And, no matter what industry it is, that is a challenge. People like to be comfortable, do the old thing that works, that they're used to. It is a challenge.
While at the same time, they're excited about, the new technology. They see it. They see this flashy object and they want to use it. They tell their teams like, hey, we're going to buy this. Go figure it out. And it ends up in a closet somewhere. Or you get a team that doesn't actually really know how to use it. Or they use it and then they don't do anything with the data.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder and question my mind, why do any of it?
Yeah.
Why go down that path if you don't fully understand its value?
Yeah. I think, and this is one of the reasons we are doing what we're doing with RCN, is trying to be this hub of information, education, trying to bring some of this to light through conversations, through the conference, through presentations. There's such a lack of people understanding the whole ecosystem. And back to what you just said, I think it's one of the reasons a lot of people buy a device and then it ends up in a closet is they didn't really understand all that goes into it and the workflows and how much data it's going to create and what you need to process that and how we use the data to make deliverables. It is all these technologies that are growing and that are out, they're very cool. They're very exciting. They do solve big problems, yet it really is a complex ecosystem and process and learning and skill set. And there's a lot to it.
Yeah. I wish it was as simple as buying a product from somebody.
Press the button.
Start it. Get something on the back end and be able to quantify your data. Whatever, in terms of reality capture or scanning. It'd be awesome to get a point cloud and be able to have something inherently come out of it, but that's not the case.
Yeah.
There's a million different outputs. You know that better than anybody, that you can't just go scan something and solve the world's problems with it.
Yeah.
You got to actually, there's still a lot of work. That's a very small portion of what the tool is used for.
Yeah. Yeah. You already mentioned a little bit of the, experience that you had working in different project types, data centers, things like that, which are some of, I think, the most complex, detailed, driven, project types. What other types of projects, with where you guys are now, over the last couple years, been building and doing what you're doing? What are some of the project types and industries that you see really diving in and adopting and becoming, users of all of these things?
Yeah, I think two. One that we're always going to, kind of where we started is the semiconductor industry. They are very advanced in terms of their level of development, the detail that they put into their BIM, and the data that they're trying to extract. The quantity surveyors on those projects are getting more advanced in terms of what they want to see. Yeah. A lot of times contractually they're saying, hey, we're gonna pay you for what's in a BIM model, not what's installed in the field, but what actually is in the model. And you get an environment like that where you have to have a lot more accountability to that engagement. Yeah. And the second one would in our experience, would be more the oil and gas, industrial spaces. Yeah. Energy is taxed right now. With data centers that are expanding in a lot of manufacturing nationwide, you've got to have the energy to be able to support that. And we're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of growth, TIs on a lot of those projects would come in and be able to support them with technology to help them, do that a little more efficient, save money, scale faster. That's exactly what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are both very complex environments, very high dollar projects, very expensive projects. Yeah. Projects that, if there are mistakes, are very, very costly. And, with a lot of the technologies we talk about, the more detailed, expensive the type of project or environment, the more valuable the reason to adopt the technology.
Oh, absolutely.
The oil and gas facilities were some of the earliest adopters of this tech back when it was super slow, super expensive. 20 years ago, nobody knew about it. Those were the industries that are like, we still need it because facilities and stuff, they're so complex. And if they go down, it's so expensive, $1 million a day. It's like, okay, well, what if we could save a day?
Yeah, exactly.
One day
Exactly.
of downtime or risk or,
Yep.
it's, and yet the technology has also become cheaper, faster, easier to use. It's also now, as opposed to 10 years ago, where it is today, it still is applicable to super cheap jobs that are not that risky and
Correct.
industries that are not that complex. I mean, I know entire companies, all they do is scan homes, and people are like, a house? Like, that's super small and cheap, and are they really going to pay for it? Well, if you get hundreds of homes that need to be documented, it's more of a volume game, but it's really cool to see as the technology, people are becoming aware of it and people are proving the value of it, and different devices are coming out that are faster or smaller or cheaper, or it's really expanding the awareness and the adoption across so many different environments.
Oh, absolutely. I have a question for you though. I mean, does that awareness, does that create some decision paralysis? Does that create more chaos, you think?
Well, the awareness or the variety of technologies?
Probably more of the variety.
Yeah.
The latter there.
I have definitely said, when I got started in scanning 15 years ago, there was like two options. I mean, there was not 50 devices to compare and think about and consider, and different accuracies and SLAM and mobile and automatic registration. Like, none of that existed.
Yeah.
It was like, you have this big, expensive terrestrial scanner. You have to run survey control in every single scan setup. Like, that was the workflow.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it was more difficult. It was more expensive. But everybody that was getting into the tech back then, they were kind of learning the same processes, same workflows. Now, when you got 20, 30 different options, I do think it's harder. It's more complex because the people that are entering now, or even the people that are in it now, it's really hard to learn and understand, well, what's the difference of workflow I have to use if I'm going to use a mobile and a SLAM type scanner than a terrestrial? It's very different processes. Well, how do I control the errors that build with SLAM drift versus terrestrial, registration? How do I deal with the point clouds out of this type of format than this one? How do I, I definitely think that there's benefit to the amount of technologies that exist now, for sure. But it does create a higher need for education and content and consulting to help people learn, here's the tech that you should use for this type of application because this is the accuracy you want,
Exactly.
And I see it even from the client side, where the awareness and the desire for these technologies to be implemented on jobs, owners and asset owners are now saying, we want this done, but they also don't have the understanding to know, well, how do we even ask for what we want?
Why?
How do I compare the technology that this company is saying they'll use and this one? Why is that one so much cheaper? I don't know. I don't know the names I don't know the differences.
Yeah.
So it creates complexity for the users of the technology, the people requesting the technology to be used on their jobs. It is messy. And that's where I think over the next couple years, the next few years, there will start to be this, and there already is a desire for it, but some types of training, some types of certifications, some types of standards in process so that people know how to ask for it, the differences between the tech, the workflows that need to be demanded to hit certain accuracies in critical environments versus non. Or
exactly.
Right now, it's people say it all the time. It's the Wild West of the industry. It's like everyone has a different type of technology. Everyone uses different workflows. Nobody knows what people are doing. They just, you talk about like laser scanning or drone or whatever. People just say, I need my building scanned. Okay.
What do you mean?
How? For what?
Yeah.
What accuracy?
Yeah.
What do you need, like bolts captured to 1/8 of an inch accuracy? Or are you just looking for like an overall map of what's in it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little wild.
I think that's fresh in the mind, with the recent experience as well had at Geo Week. That was our first trip there, and,
Cool.
and we had a booth there. That was a huge topic of conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I knew it was a big event, but I walk in and I look at all these tools,
Oh yeah.
multiple varieties of with respect of basically the same tool.
Yeah.
And we were one of the few actual like service providers there. We weren't selling a product.
Yep.
We're there engaging in helping contractors and other entities. And we had a lot of conversations with people, and it really came down to, they look at it, they're like, well, which one do I go with?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the real life
Yes.
application of it. And
Yeah.
we deal with that on a regular basis. We have a couple customers that we have, and one of them actually, we were discussing, we were standing there, and we utilize the Navis SLAM scanners. We have the VLX3s and the MLX. And he came to me, he said, hey, I see that you got the VLX. What do you think about the Leica? Or what do you think about the FAR? Have you used that one? I was like, well, yeah, we have. He's like, well, would you use that one for this project? And so we had this long conversation of, he's not experienced it yet. And I was able to walk him through and say, this is why we use this and why we use it on this project type.
Yep.
It makes the most sense for this project and for the use case.
Yeah.
Had a conversation with a gentleman too, kind of contradictory to that. He came to me and says, well, why do you use the Navis? We don't use it. We don't think it's as accurate. I was like, well, maybe not as accurate for you and what you're using it for.
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't detract from what it actually is and,
Yeah.
and the possibilities it allows us to, accomplish in our use cases.
Yeah.
And I that's where the industry, I think, should be a little more, just understanding.
Yeah.
Let's be willing to take a few extra seconds.
Yep.
Just ask the questions.
Yeah.
Seek for understanding rather than say, casting something off and saying that's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that goes back to what we just talked about, the complexity of, there are so many types of technology, and I don't really blame the vendors, but sometimes I do.
They're competing, so
everybody markets that they can do the exact same thing, and it's like, how do we? We have to figure out as a industry, which is part of what our committees that we have that go on. Not everybody knows that those are happening. We need to start spreading the word about them better, but we have committees that meet on a biweekly basis, which are volunteers from all around the industry, all around the world, that meet and talk about these things. And they're working on, how do we build case studies? How do we build documentation that helps people understand the best practices of like different devices for different workflows, for different, industry types, or because everyone has those same questions. And right now, the only way people learn what should be applied where is trying it.
Correct.
And failing. Yeah. You're like, well, we thought this one was going to work well. It wasn't accurate enough. Well, we thought this one was going to work well. It was too accurate and too expensive. Now, it's like, shoot, it takes time and experience and testing and trialing, which is the whole idea that we have, is like, how do we share these insights? There's a lot of companies out there trialing stuff, hitting their head against the wall, learning. It's like, if we as an industry can share those stories of like what's working, what's not, why, a case study of a project, it will help the whole industry learn those things, avoid the same headaches, which helps the projects go better. It helps the clients win. It helps the clients want to do more work, instead of some of the old stories that there are people who tried to have scanning or something done on a project 10 years ago. And it's like, well, it wasn't a tech problem. It was probably an application problem or the wrong tech or... So I just believe that sharing insights and learnings helps the whole industry adopt it better, move forward better.
Yeah.
That's part of our hope anyways.
I think obviously it's created a lot of traction, a lot of, visualization, and people are starting to be able to grasp onto this idea of the options that are available to them.
Yeah.
And it's not what isn't ever taboo, but lack of English today, it's not a taboo conversation to have anymore. We can be open, we can be transparent about, these challenges that we're dealing with and how we can overcome them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges we see across, whatever industry vertical is. There's a lot of building in the U.S. right now, and internationally too. But in the U.S., there's projects everywhere, mega projects everywhere, and there's a huge tax on resources, skilled labor, BIM labor, reality capture. People are, to a point where there's a lot of times we're talking with, other competitors in the industry, and we're talking about the same projects.
Yes.
We're on different sides of the country.
Yeah.
And we're calling each other saying, do you have resources? Do you have people? And we're like,
I was about to ask you.
Yeah, we're looking at the same project, And so that's, we're seeing that more and more and more, which is, I love it, Because one thing that's going to force us to do as a space is to rely on each other more.
Yep.
We have to. There's not enough experience and skilled resources, at least in the BIM and VDC and the reality capture that we deal with, to be able to say, yeah, I've got this experienced guy. I can put him there tomorrow.
Yep. I, not in a bragging way, but, you know, it's really fun looking back, and I'm like, I've been saying this for years, and I say it still right now. Every time I talk to someone about this, I'm like, I see this path that the demand for these technologies are growing, and the demand is outpacing the industry's ability to provide them.
Yeah.
Because yes, there are a couple colleges out there teaching people about BIM and scanning. Even someone who graduates from one of the colleges that does have training around this, like we talked about earlier, they're not yet fully experienced, ready to go. They don't know the ins and the outs. They haven't even if they get taught what laser scanning does, they haven't operated it. They haven't done it in projects. They haven't, not to the point that anyone is ready to just hire and take over the job.
Correct.
There is this learning curve. And there are also only so many schools that are actually putting those people out, where every company I talk to that touches these technologies right now, they're all trying to hire.
Yeah.
And
I saw
at this point,
I saw it there yesterday. I'll tell you, the BYU Idaho does an incredible job. They bring every contractor you can imagine, the largest GCs in the country, some of the most, technology advanced, innovative, subcontractors as well, and they are hungry for people who are learning, who have that skill set, or engaging in that skill set, because it is a huge demand.
Yep. And it creates a lot of demand and a lot of opportunity for the people that see that and are building in this space, either as a service company or, people that are trying to pick a career path. It's like any of these technologies you become a specialist in, and even if you spent 1 year becoming good at laser scanning or BIM or whatever, like the industry is so hungry for it. It's a great career path. There's a lot of opportunity, and that's not slowing down. And a lot of people ask the question or are afraid of, well, is AI going to replace the need for all of this in the next 2 years, whatever? I'm like, no.
It can't.
It can't. No. Are there aspects where it will support managing data, maybe even advanced auto extraction of certain features?
Yeah.
Yes. Just like in anywhere.
We need that.
Will help somewhere.
We want that.
Yeah.
But you still have to have people that go out there and do it.
Yep.
And explain why.
Yep.
You're going to have somebody who has zero idea what it's about. You're going to have an owner that says, hey, I want to scan. That's great. There's a cool AI tool. You go plug it in, right? Go make it work. That's not going to happen. Somebody has to have the experience, the knowledge, and the wherewithal to say, this is how it's done.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Question. You guys are in the process of using this tech, and we don't only talk about scanning or just BIM, but like there's a whole ecosystem of technologies. And even those that are on the leading edge of it, there's still lots of challenges, pain points, things like that with the technology, with the growth, with the adoption. What comes to mind for you as some of the pain points that you guys still, are facing or are working through with the technologies you're using?
It's exactly that. It's the technology. It's the advancement, the innovation in how fast the hardware and the software is moving and staying relevant. Because what we experience today is different in terms of workflows and deliverables than what we experienced 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
5 years ago, it was easy for us and we weren't in a business at the time, but engaging in reality capture and BIM VDC services and projects, everybody was happy to just have a model. They were happy to have a point cloud that they could compare to a model, and that was it. In some cases that we were dealing with, but now everybody's kind of gotten over this curve of like, oh, okay, that excitement's gone. What really can this point cloud do for us? How can we integrate it better into BIM and VDC? Another part that we also engage in is the engineering side and I love that you say ecosystem, is we have this ecosystem of how are we designing visually, technically, and in a real world, so where it's all cohesive. That's the challenge right now is taking that to the next step
Mm-hmm.
and being on the leading edge of that. And saying that too is there are great companies out there. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of big ones, but they don't have all the work either.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cases, they're not getting every job. They're not winning every bid. And I think that still gives a lot of people in industry some good room and growth to find those spaces and those gaps that they can benefit from.
Yeah. 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 Even the big companies, a lot of people assume, all those big global engineering firms, like they have massive teams that are specialized in these technologies. And in all reality, even the big companies have a very small team.
They're subbing out a lot.
They sub out a lot.
Yeah.
Even if they have it all internal, they can't handle how much work just their internal company demands.
Yeah.
Which goes back to, again, just the labor conversation, the skills, this space as it stands today, there's basically a set amount of people who are already experienced in this tech, and everyone's kind of just trying to work together, collaborate together, steal employees from each other. Like there's only so many people. The next option is you bring in fresh people and you have to train them from the ground up because no one's really teaching people.
We need more of that.
Yeah.
We need to be okay with that. Projects need to be okay with that. I understand there's liabilities and there's a lot of risk and there's costs associated with a lot of this. We take that into consideration. But in 5-10 years from now, we need to prepare ourselves for this growth.
Yeah.
And if we're not engaging people now, and if they're in school and we're talking about those people, there's also the people that are not in school.
Yeah.
Let's bring more people into this industry, into the space, and teach them.
Yeah.
In my experience, I got in the BIM VDC space with zero experience, excelled at it, really loved it, and was kind of running my own teams and processes within 6 to 9 months. So people can learn fast.
Yeah.
I wasn't the smartest, wasn't the most experienced, but at least I had an understanding and was willing to say I'm going to keep learning.
Yep.
Let's do that more.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep my answer to people that ask about okay, I've got a kid that's coming out of high school, doesn't know what he wants to do. With what you're saying, what would you recommend? And I'm like, I recommend that.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, this space, there is so much opportunity that if you're 18, 20, 25, age doesn't matter.
Mm-mm.
If you see somebody talking about this opportunity and you're like, you know what, I want to give that a shot. You could spend 1 month at home watching YouTube videos, researching the space, listening to these conversations.
Yeah.
Download an app on your phone, play with scanning, download a free trial of software, understand the basics of what one of these paths looks like, and then pitch yourself to a company as an intern. So many people, if you got an outreach from them, it'd be like, oh yeah, you're interested, you're teachable, you're ready to learn, boom, job. And with less than a year, if you really applied yourself, you could be a decent, experienced technician.
You could go work for almost any country in the States, and you could go contact anybody, and they're always looking for someone.
So I'm like, you don't have to go back to college and go get some big degree. A lot of these technologies, when you're in a space that is adopting technologies that are new enough that they don't even require a degree, nobody's teaching you how to scan. You don't go to school for that. You'll learn it on the job.
Yeah.
If you picked one of these routes, it's only a year or two before you're decently experienced. And from there, you can climb the ladder in a company. You could start your own business.
Yeah.
I've watched it happen over and over because of the growing demand in the industry and not seeing that slow down for the next several years. It's a wild time.
There's a part of that, with new people, but I think there's also those who've been in the industry for a while, post-COVID.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your input on this too, is remote work. In our experience, is killing BIM and VDC space. And I'll explain why. On a lot of these mega projects that we're on, customers, whether it's the owners or GCs or subs, They want people on site.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's going to be in a giant city. It's going to be in New York. It's going to be in Phoenix or LA, a little bit easier, more accommodating. Sometimes it's going to be rural central Texas. Sometimes it's going to be Kansas or Alabama. And people, and I don't blame them, not everybody is apt to travel and go do those things, but there's a personal and a professional aspect of it. If you want to continue advancing, at least in your industry and advancing in your skill set, be willing and able to go engage on these projects.
Yeah.
Stop working at home.
Yeah.
And I've done it.
Yep.
I go back and forth on it, but go participate in a project. Build relationships with people. You will learn new things. I guarantee you, 100% of the time you go to a project, you meet new people, and you learn what they're doing. Not a single project is the same. You're going to learn something different that you did not know before, and you're going to contribute in a way that will be beneficial to people.
Yeah. I think what I see is there's opportunity for both in-office work, for remote work. I see employees that only want one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I think that the opportunity for those are just completely different paths. I hate remote work. I'll say it. I don't care.
You and I both, we agree on this one.
I think for multiple reasons. One, there are many people that I think can work remotely well. They have a home office set up. They love it. They thrive at getting to sit and be undistracted by themselves. But if I had to say the percentage of actual workers that I think that is truly the case, I'd say it's 5%. I think 5% of professionals could work from home successfully.
I could reason with that.
I think 90 to 95% of people get distracted, are not productive, don't focus, say they're working. I just think that's the case. I've experienced it myself. I've experienced it with dozens of employees. I've talked to many people across teams, and it's also why we saw this huge swing with what happened through shutdowns and all that, and everybody going remote, and companies saying, we're going fully remote, everyone can stay remote forever. And then it's like 12 months later, never mind, we're actually going back to office. It's like, and there's so many reasons for it. And I don't blame people, but like, there's this need to also have some level of separation from home life, personal life, work life, work. Blending the two, it's like you get average at both.
Yeah.
And when you don't have a team meet together in person, working in person, collaborating in person, building a culture as a business, it's really hard to keep a lot of that up remotely.
Yeah.
Can it happen? Yes. Can a business build and survive building remotely? Yes. But personally, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah. And I think there's some roles, if you're not involved in the construction, definitely more apt to say go work at home or so some degree of remoteness. But at least for what I do on a day-to-day basis and what we do as a business is we're engaging with the superintendents, the GFs, these warehouses. They want a prefab. We're working with the PMs. They're all on site.
Yeah.
The building happens on site. It doesn't happen in an office somewhere. It doesn't happen in some remote part of the country or internationally.
Yeah.
If you want to contribute and give the best chance of success for BIM and VDC, for reality capture, for any of those activities, sit down with the people actually doing the work.
Yeah.
One, there's two things that are going to happen. One, they're gonna trust in it more. They're gonna believe in it. They're gonna be more accountable to it. Two, you're gonna get better at building. You're gonna get better at understanding how the tools can be applied to these projects as we continue to move into the future.
Yeah.
And we have to. If we take with the technology and we're stationary, we take what we have today and we say, okay, we're done learning, and we close ourselves off, and then 5 years down the road, we're going to be behind the times.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to what we're seeing. And every project we go on, it's really cool. There's new vendors, there's new products that come out, there's new methods of building. A lot of the prefabrication has been awesome to see, to speed up these projects, to reduce, man hours and reduce cost. All of it plays into each other. And I that's my reasoning for saying, get involved.
Yeah.
Get involved, be there, be present.
Yeah. 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 What are some of the lessons you've learned as a leader, building a company, having employees, having teams? What are some of the lessons that you've learned that pop out to you when I ask that?
Recently, delegation, trusting people. I look at it in a way where I was given an insane amount of trust to do a lot of things throughout the early parts of my career that honestly I had no reason to be in those positions. Nobody, they didn't have to give me that responsibility.
Yeah.
But because they did, I was able to succeed. I was able to find a way to say, I either have to do this and succeed, or this is not going to work out.
Yep.
There was no in between. There was no gray area. So as we continue to hire and as we get on new projects, we're hiring for BIM managers, we're hiring for, scan technicians, and a lot of people in that case haven't used the Navis tools. They've never used a VLX and walked around and understand the SLAM process and the processing and how that whole workflow. So even when we're hiring scanning technicians, it's new for them.
Yeah.
But we have to say, hey, I trust you to go use this and apply it and get better at it. And that's one of the biggest things for us is just being, I'm not going to micromanage. I absolutely hate it. I hate being micromanaged.
Yep.
I like being given a chance to learn and contribute, and I'm going to do the same thing for anybody else. Hiring stuff.
Yeah.
That's probably the second part of that.
Yeah.
Hiring is tough. Finding the right people
Yeah.
who can contribute at a high level, who in our cases, they don't just come on and they're not just in a corner somewhere. They are participating. So there's more than just a technical component. There's the personal component. How can they communicate to people? Are they personable? Do they know how to communicate? Can they type a decent email?
Yep.
Can they call somebody? Are they willing to call somebody on the phone and, at least be there and relatable?
Yeah. Yeah, I used to, early in my building, I used to really hire on the technical skills and the resume and the past experience and I was like over and over and over getting people that were just, the character wasn't there, the values weren't there, the showing up and just being available wasn't, like, all the basic things were lacking, but all the technical experience was supposedly there. And then over time, like, that transitioned so much to where I'm like, I would rather have someone who doesn't know anything, but they're a dedicated, loyal, they show up, they want to learn, they're teachable. Like, the basics of a good employee became so much more important to me than the technical aspect. The ideal is when you can find the mix of both.
Yeah.
But I think that became one of the big focuses and learnings for me through building a company is like the culture and people and the getting along and the team aspect and stuff is so important to build something sustainable.
100%.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the mistakes that you see from companies that are trying to adopt and implement the technologies but are failing to do so or are struggling to do so? What do you think are some of the mistakes they're making?
Organizationally, they don't listen. And to expound on that, they tell you what they want. They say, we want to use these tools. We want to have an advanced BIM model. We want to prefab. But they don't take the time to sit down with the people or even hire the people that are going to say, well, what do you actually want? Why do you want BIM and VDC? Why do you want prefab? We run into this almost on a daily basis. Somebody will come to us, and a recent one, a customer came to us and said, hey, we want to scan this project. We need to know what it's going to cost to scan it. We're going to need to know what's required to do clash coordination. So right off the bat, I was like, clash coordination and scanning, the two don't, like, what are you talking about? This is a TI project. There's no model as far as I'm aware. There's nothing. So what are you going to coordinate? What are you going to clash detect? And, you try to explain to them, you ask these questions, these discovery questions, and they're like, oh, no, that's not what we want. We just need you to tell us what it is. Like, well, I can't tell you what something is if I don't know what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I need to know. And what we mean by that is we're not just going to say, tell us what you really mean, because they're just going to tell you what they think needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be more willing and able to have the criticism, professional criticism, be told like, no, that's not going to work. There's better ways to do this. This is what we'd recommend. And when there's recommendations given, listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
There needs to be more of that.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a huge need for that level of consulting to businesses that are trying to adopt and grow in any of the technologies in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
Back to what we talked about earlier of like, it is complex. People don't understand all the processes or the options or how to get from point A to point B and this need to actually help educate everybody on the options, the process, the do's, the don'ts, is so needed. Many companies just ask for something like that and people just perform it, not helping with that level of understanding, and just be like, here's the price. We'll scan it. I don't care. We'll just give you the data.
Yeah, here's
and
your
then
RCS.
the client's
We're
like,
done.
wait, how do I use this to do what I thought I wanted to accomplish? And those types of situations, if we don't do the further level of education, are what then cause a pain point for the whole industry, because that client is like, oh, this technology can't solve the problem that I thought I was trying to solve.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it was a workflow thing. You're asking for the wrong thing, or you used the wrong process, or and then back to the second point you made of like companies being open for that guidance and actually listening to the recommendations, because if they at least, here's the other challenge though. Who are they getting the recommendations from?
Correct.
And are they getting the right recommendations? That's the other challenge that I see, is like a lot of people are getting advice on what they should do, and sometimes it's completely the wrong information because and again, I hate to go back to like, well, sometimes it's the salespeople, sometimes it's a vendor, sometimes it's someone selling the hardware, sometimes it's a lot of the people that actually sell in this technology and in this industry, they don't know. They don't even know how to use their own tools sometimes.
And they don't even have comparison of what the other tools are even capable of.
Yep. That's where I see this other challenge is like, there's a lot of, I think, misinformation, miseducation, wrong advice happening across the industry from people who haven't had the level of experience or haven't had the diversity, or which is another problem I want to figure out how to solve through content, through education, is like, okay, let's put out some true comparison reports. Let's put out some true case studies where we don't just say, oh, this is the best, type of technology for this project. Well, let's actually document that type of project with several different things and show results and help educate everyone on like what is actually possible. There
might be something, and you may not have an answer on this now, and maybe not even want to talk about it publicly because of what it is.
I'll talk about it.
I look at it in a lot of sense because of the experience I've had, fortunately, in my career, the commercial side of it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the innovation and the growth and what we're trying to do to push on the industry, the decision makers is what we'll call them. The decision makers don't know, don't want to be involved, don't care, or it's just not in their scope.
Yeah.
And so they'll get somebody on their team. It could be, close in their organization. It could be downstream, depending on the size that it is. Somebody could come to them and say, hey, we want to do X, Y, Z. We want to buy these tools and we want to use these. And this person who holds the purse is going to say, okay, well, we don't have that in the budget.
Yeah.
There's no conversation there.
Yeah.
And that's an internal workflow in an organization where they've totally just said, yeah, we're not going to contribute.
Yep.
And for us as a business, we run into that a lot too. We've been hired in many cases. We come on, they want us to perform some job, and then we go to offer recommendations, beyond that, say, hey, either this can improve your job or we can be more effective with this. And like, no, we're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so frustrating.
Totally. Yeah.
Frustrating.
And that is part of why, it's part of the why of why I want these committees to help create educational content. So a way to solve some of that problem. It's a lot harder to have this conversation and say, this is why you should spend this much money for us to come scan your project. Sorry, not in the budget. Next. Like, we're going to do things the way we're doing it now. It's already planned, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. What if this group of people, put together thorough case studies that show, here's the way most people do it now.
Yeah.
Here's the actual outcome of multiple projects where this technology was implemented. Here was the savings. Here was the issue reduction. Here was the cost savings. Here's the time savings, whatever the actual outcome is.
Yeah.
If that was documented twice, 5 times, 10 times across different businesses, different industries, and that content was put out in a way that people are coming across it on social media, in videos, in conversations, we're immediately starting to get in front of the people that make those decisions, where maybe they weren't going to take the time to trial it on a job and risk their own project, not knowing the outcome. But if we can create these examples of things working successfully, and we can even convince those people, those decision makers, to come to our conference and hear those case studies on a stage, and then after hours talk and network with the people that are doing that have had success with it. Now that same person who was hesitant is going to go back and say, okay, I just heard 3 companies just like ours. This is what they're doing and it's successful. We have to try this. Like, if not, we're going to really fall. That's part of why I think the education and the content and the things can really impact the industry is it's really hard to do it organically.
Yeah.
And yet, the other thing I say to situations like that is you're never going to get 100% of companies on board to do this.
No.
You know what's going to happen to the ones that don't, though? They're going to fall off. They're going to fall behind. And it's going to happen to every type of company.
Yeah.
If there's an engineering company that says, we're not going to get into BIM, it's too much work, it's too expensive. Well, when every single project gets to the point it is required that you design using 3D and doing BIM, now you're like, well, why aren't we winning any jobs?
Yeah.
Well, because you're not up to date with industry standard practice.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're a survey company who doesn't fly drones, it doesn't do scanning, doesn't use these technologies in a way that improves how fast you capture, the speed of delivery, the innovative deliverables. Well, when all these big companies require that when you do survey, you also deliver a point cloud and you're like, what's that?
Yeah. How do you do that?
Look, this is why I think innovation is so important. It's not that you have to be on the very front end, the bleeding edge of every single new piece of technology. But as the industry starts to demand it for certain project types, if you become a company who's too hesitant to say, we're not going to adopt it, there is a moment where the majority of companies start to require something. And if you didn't adopt early enough, it's way harder later to say, oh, shoot, now we have to become this innovative company that uses these technologies. Who do we hire? How do we start a department? It doesn't work that way.
We know what's awesome about that too. I would say the current situation where we're at, they don't have to build a department. They don't have to hire. And that's the beauty of it because of how many, how large the space is. That's where we start relying on our partnerships.
Collaboration.
This network, this communication where, if a survey company says, yeah, you know what, we need to get on board with aerial. We need to get on board with scanning and be able to engage in this. They may want to just say, hey, you know what? We've got a great partner over here.
Yep.
Let's build that relationship with them. Why would we want to invest all the money and time into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in tools and manpower and everything else that goes with that when we could say, hey, can you come help us?
Yep. And it's one of the reasons I tell service companies, like, over the next few years, you're going to be in a really good spot because when some of those companies who are behind the times decide, oh, shoot, we have to start doing this, there's not enough talent out there.
They have no option.
They're like, you either are plug and play with a partner or a collaborator or a service provider, or you go buy a company, or you very slowly start to try to do it on your own. And the demand that will be created across all the industries adopting these technologies, because again, that's one of the things I think is most exciting and honestly just cool about this space, is that these are not just construction tools. They're being used in entertainment. They're being used in forensics. They're being used in airports, high rises, survey, underground mining, everything.
Residential stuff, real
Everywhere.
estate. Yeah.
It's everywhere. And that small group of experts that work in this space are the ones who are starting to have to fulfill collaborating across everywhere. It creates the opportunity to be some level of a generalist and help people all over, or niche down and become specific and target like just one space. Lots of opportunity. It's a fun time.
Absolutely. It's worth a conversation or two at least, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. If you were to talk a little bit about, obviously we've talked a lot about where we see it going and just the demand and stuff, but do you see any big changes in the next few years, like for you guys? Is it just scaling what you're doing, or do you see other technologies that are piquing interest? Do you see, just what's some of your thoughts about the future?
Yeah, two parts to that answer. We're not a technology company. We're not a software developer or anything, but we absolutely do see how can we integrate more into what we're providing to a customer. Utilizing the advancements in software, utilizing AI, how can we bring that into our current projects, which are different than a lot of other industry verticals, but how can we bring that in to make BIM and VDC more effective, more meaningful? How can we engage in that a little better? That's something that we're really, really, really pushing. The other part of it, in connection with the education initiative that you guys are absolutely, and I 100% support in that side, is still the consulting side.
Yeah.
Finding ways to be more effective in how we go to a customer and say, hey, it's worth you spending this amount of money now to plan, and we have a lot of pre-con and concept than it is for you to go say, we're just going to implement without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Spend all this money on tools, resources, and everything to find out that, it didn't really do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So we're working on both right now. I think the latter on that in terms of our communication with the customers and the different markets within the industry is getting better at communicating what the goal actually is.
Yeah.
Getting them to buy into it, be more accountable to it. And it's not a negative trying to convince somebody or trick them into anything. It's more of like, hey, here's the reality. Mm-hmm. Let's open your eyes a little bit. You can get better, especially the subs, we've seen it a lot. There's a lot of private equity money going around and a lot of acquisitions, and these companies are getting massive and they're growing so fast. And we would love to be there to support them in this type of role because of how fast they're going to grow. They're going to need the help. Yeah. And they don't know it yet. They don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm.
It's an exciting space to be in for sure. Yeah. It can sometimes be frustrating because of how slow it could move or because of a lot of the uncertainty that people deal with. Yeah. Because it is new. It is unfamiliar for so many of them. And it's giving them the confidence. Yeah. Yeah. We've got to have the confidence in it. We've got to believe in it. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest goals for us is we've got to be able to stand behind it, talk about it all day, talk about the disruption, be okay with creating an uncomfortable environment, because there's a lot of growth that's going to come from being uncomfortable. Yep. Yep. And that's personal, professional, an organization as a whole. We've got to keep pushing that. Yeah.
Have you done in any of your projects or with any clients, have you done any actual like case studies or comparisons or things to like help them come out with ROIs or trialing a process or different technology versus old way? Have you done any of that?
Not heavily. We're actually engaged in that a lot right now. Cool. We have a webinar coming up with Navis actually in about a month. Yep. And so we're showcasing a project that ecosystem, love that word. We've been using that internally. Yep. how we've integrated BIM, VDC, reality capture, and engineering to support this one project.
Cool.
So we're actually internally working on a process to do that with that project and so many others where we can show the value and the relevance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I think it's one of the best ways to, again, I think, educate the industry that has question marks still or is like curious of what is it really worth doing. It's like, well, let's find some companies that are doing it and document it, you know? I think anything like that companies can do is helpful overall.
And you know what's exciting too? Not us just sharing that with the customer, but there's a lot we learn through the process.
Yeah.
When we engage on something, we're not saying we're doing it perfect.
Yep.
We're using our best experience, best knowledge at the time, and as we go through project, we continue to learn.
Yeah.
So we get to the end of it and we say, you know, we probably could have done that better. So let's do that on the next one.
Yep.
Let's do that with the next customer who has a problem. And we keep doing that over and over and over. And I love that.
Yeah. It's the mindset and the process that you have to do and you have to be okay with if you're one of the companies that's adopting super new technology and new tools and whatever. It's like every project's different. You're like, and I experienced that a lot early on because when I started growing my, service company, I didn't really know anybody who was doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I started getting asked to do all these weird jobs of like, hey, could you come do a mile underground tunnel of a gold mine? I think so. I could try.
Yeah.
Hey, could you do this, ship? I think so. I could try. Every project, every industry, every different project type, they all have their, something that's unique about them, a process that needs to be slightly different end deliverables and goals, different accuracies. And it's like, it takes the trialing to start figuring out, well, which tech should we use? We don't really know until we trial both and see the outcome and test it and prove the accuracies. It's like, that's the fun part about being in the technology of this industry is everybody that's touching this tech is an innovator, is someone who's like trialing and learning and pushing the boundaries of how can we use emerging tech to solve old problems.
In a way, let's break it so we can improve it and keep getting better at it.
Yep.
Love that part of it.
Yep. On the personal side, couple questions. How do you keep yourself like growing as a leader? Personal development stuff. Just curious, like what comes to mind for you? Any habits or things that you have that you do?
Yeah. So my faith in God is absolutely the most important thing in my life. And so I dedicate a lot of time to that daily, through prayer and through scripture. And the second part is my family. That's been very challenging this year. Both of those have been very eye-opening. I travel for work currently, and so being away from my wife and kids has been extremely difficult.
Yeah.
But it's taught us a lot. Taught us a lot about our character, our nature as individuals, as a family. And then, of course, relying on my faith, through the challenges of all this. Beyond that, I've always loved learning.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of education. I've done a lot of non-formal education. I find myself always trying to find something new.
Yeah.
And sometimes it frustrates my wife that I jump around. I'm like, hey, honey, I want to go do this. I want to go do that. Funny enough, I had finished my undergraduate. And my reward to myself was always going to be, I'm going to go get my pilot's license. Something I've always wanted to do since I was like tall as this table, 4 years old. And so I graduated, and no kidding, a week later, I started my ground study. I got my FAA medical, and I had my license about 13 months later. Well, at the same time, I started a master's program. And so my wife she was like, do you ever slow down? Do you ever stop? I said, no, I can't.
Yeah.
And I don't do it in a way where there's imbalance in my life. There's a ton of balance. I focus on the things I need to focus on. But by continuing to learn, by continuing to engage myself in professional, personal development has allowed me to just keep growing. And the more you do it, at least in my experience, it just gets easier.
Yeah.
It's more comfortable. It's more exciting to look at change. I don't fear change.
Yeah.
I look at it as an opportunity to say, wow, I can be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
I can and more importantly, I can serve somebody better. I can find a better way to be a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better coworker. and help bring other people up too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
When it comes to some of the business sense, do you have any type of like official mentoring, or people you follow, or people you learn from, or like
That's evolving.
Yeah.
I used to, and relationships come and go.
Yep.
Which is okay. That's life, and
Yep.
we use that as a great tool.
Yep.
I don't at the current moment have any, like direct mentors.
Yep.
I'm absolutely looking for one. So if somebody wants to say, hey, I'd love to come build a relationship with you, I'm all up for it. Maybe go flying or something. I rely on, my partner
Yep.
in the business. I rely on a lot of family. I really rely on the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
I look to a lot of great people who've accomplished a lot at all levels.
Yep.
And it's just great.
Yeah.
To develop those relationships. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just always curious to hear, from people that are leaders of a business of like, how they think about these things. I always tell people from like that mentorship or coaching or whatever, I didn't have any official mentors.
Yeah.
Like I found people online. I found YouTube channels. I found certain authors that I was reading books from that I'm like, those are my mentors. Like, to me, there's different levels of mentorship. Yes, could I have a formal agreement with a guy that I meet with on a monthly basis that, I've never had that. I have never had a formal mentorship like that. My mentors have all been like, hey, that guy's he doesn't know who I exist, but that's my mentor. Like I'm watching that. I'm learning from him. I very much believe that idea for people that want to grow. It's like, find people that you want to be like. Find people who you look up to. Find people that have done something that you want to do. It's the one thing that I try to advise people, even in younger ages or in beginning levels of like, I think so many people only listen to their direct circle around them for advice. And I always pause and ask that question of like, okay, if you don't agree with the advice you're getting, one question to ask yourself is, does the person giving you advice have experience around the thing they're giving you advice in?
Correct.
For me, when it came to business, I was like, okay, I don't know a lot of people who have built successful businesses, so I'm trying to follow and learn from people that are sharing online, people who have podcasts, people that have built something successful. I'm like, those are the people I want to listen to because they've done something that I want to do.
Yeah.
What are they saying? And then taking those pieces and nuggets that you learn in a book, that you learn from conversations, that you're like, okay, I didn't know that. It sounds scary, but they say to try this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in any level of that, whether you can find people to surround yourself with on a personal level, whether you can find people to follow, just being a constant learner, I think is definitely something that helps you grow at whatever level you're at.
It'll set you apart from so many people. And the more you do it, you realize there's a lot of people that don't engage in it enough.
Yeah.
And the more you separate yourself from that, it's really eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's liberating. There's a lot of freedom. Nothing's ever perfect, but you realize, you have a ton of opportunity.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you held back from opportunity is often the case ourselves.
Yeah.
We keep ourselves from doing things out of fear or because we're not aware of it.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any topics we haven't hit that you want to talk about?
Oh man. No, I think we covered all of them. We covered a lot of ground there. Yeah. I came into this, I've been thinking about it the last 10, 14 days or so since we kind of got it on the calendar, and it's just where we're at currently,
Yeah. Yeah.
And in 2 weeks, it might be different.
Yep.
Maybe it's worth another conversation, but
Yeah.
I think that's what's so exciting about all of it, and I'm glad that there's a space and an environment where these conversations can be had.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to a time and space in the industry where it makes sense, still on an economical side, a commercial side, but people they can be more transparent.
Yeah.
More accountable to what we're trying to accomplish
Yep.
across the board. And probably the last point on that, at least for specifically our services, oftentimes BIM VDC reality capture gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
People say, we tried it, it
Yep.
sucks, it's a waste of money.
Mm-hmm.
I want to change that paradigm for people.
Yeah, same.
I want to get them to buy into it again, trust in it, have the confidence in it, because it does work. You just have to have the right people in your corner to help you realize how you can do it.
Yep.
It is absolutely possible.
Yeah. 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 It's a great technology. It's a great industry. All of the technologies. Again, there's a lot of them. It's complex. I think it comes back down to people and process, and it's the tools are great. 98% of the time, if someone had a bad experience, it was a process problem. Wrong technology used, or not used properly, or lack of knowledge of the people using it. Somewhere in that ecosystem is where the problem lies.
Yeah.
98% of the time. Not the technology doesn't work, it's not worth doing, it doesn't help. All of those things are not true. So I completely agree, and hopefully as a community, as an ecosystem, sharing stories, having these conversations, it leads to some of those people that maybe have that in their mind going, maybe I should give it a shot again. Maybe we should talk about this.
Selfishly, I look at that, and you originally asked me, educationally, what my background is. I went from the healthcare to the engineering, and I landed in organizational leadership. And that's why I stuck with it, is because no matter where you're at whatever organization you're in, at whatever level, whatever industry, it is about people and about how they interact.
Yeah.
Organizations are inanimate objects. They're built with people.
Yep.
And how we communicate and how we work together is going to solve these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Summarizing then with my final question, which I love asking people. Mm-hmm. If you had, 1 minute to just give a message to some of those younger professionals that are entering career, that are kind of stepping into those early days of, what do I want to do? What's some career and or life advice from what you've learned on your journey so far you would send to those people?
Invite and embrace the change in your life. Young people are in their school, or if they're young in their careers or families or whatever, life sucks. That's not a bad thing. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of things you're going to have to go through, and your ability to overcome them is what's going to set you apart from the rest of the pack. Your ability to perceive what's going on in your environment, how to deal with it, how to interact with people, how to have maintain relationships, how to communicate, how to trust, when to draw the line. And that's a good thing too, is you have to be able to say, I just won't participate in that type of behavior. So all of that, having that as, kind of a baseline for your character, I think is more important than saying trace this in your career or chase this in a personal perspective. It's just, get better at being a better person. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thanks for coming in today. Thanks for sharing some of your story, what you guys are doing as business, some insights on the tech, and I'm sure it'll be a good conversation for those listening.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.